This podcast is supported by Focus Features presenting Conclave for your awards consideration. This year, One Choice Leaves No Doubt, named by AFI as one of the best pictures of the year and the winner of Best Ensemble by the National Board of Review. Now Conclave is nominated for 6 Golden Globe Awards and 11 Critics' Choice Awards for Best Actor, Ralph Fiennes, Best Director, Edward Berger, and Best Picture of the Year. Conclave, your choice changes everything. In theaters now.
Hello, listeners and readers of AwardsWatch.com. This is the AwardsWatch Podcast, episode 266. I'm your executive editor, Ryan McQuade. And joining me today is Josh Parham.
Hello, hello.
Just me and Josh. That's all you need. Those are the best episodes. It's just me and Josh doing this, talking about movies, talking about the last batch of movies that are coming out this year, minus Mufasa. We haven't seen Mufasa yet. We see that tomorrow.
Great loss, yes.
We see that tomorrow? Are you seeing that tomorrow?
Yes, I'm seeing it tomorrow.
You excited? Be honest.
No.
Oh.
No, I'm not.
I meant lie. No, I'm looking. I'm looking forward to it from the standpoint it's the last big film of the year. They're putting it in the IMAX.
I'll say this: my expectations are very, very low. Very low.
It can't. I mean, Josh. To be fair, it can't be any worse than the 2019 film, which. I know that's a low bar.
What a bar to clear.
But I also still think, too, it's a Barry Jenkins movie, and, you know, we should go into it with his comments and everything. We should try to go into it.
Is it a Barry Jenkins movie?
I was like, yeah, I'm trying.
I know. He sort of seemed to question that himself, but, you know.
Aren't we all?
My opinion has always been, if this movie is successful, he gets a check from it, he can use it to make other more interesting movies. And every filmmaker does that. I don't have a problem with it. It's the way the industry is. Do I think this particular movie is going to be great? I'll be honest, no. But if we get if Beale Street can talk because he made this movie, then I'm fine. I'll take that trade.
I'll take 4 Moonlights for 1 Mufasa.
Exactly.
I'll take it.
Or produce some other stuff too. You know, he's a producer on After Sun. If we get more movies like that, like
if I can get him to make another All Dirt Road Tastes of Salt, After Sun, movies like that.
Yeah,
you know,
that's great.
He's very involved. I love Barry, and I hope the movie's good. Because here's the thing, I don't like to waste my time either. So, and it's the holidays. There's a lot of things going on, Josh.
Yes.
So I'm hopeful. I really am, and I'm hopeful because he's behind it and not Jon Favreau, who is a straight up company man. And I do think that there'll be moments I think that it will be worth the experience alone. And it can't and Miranda doing the music, that's got to help because it can't be any worse than the music that's in Moana 2. So
as we see what happens when you don't have Lin but are trying to sound like him, that's what you get.
Listen,
people like to dunk on Lin-Manuel Miranda.
He's good at what he does.
Knock off.
Yeah.
And they realize, no, you need him.
Well, it's like Miranda is like Tarantino. It's like Fincher. It's like anybody that is very popular. It's fun to shit on them, but when others try to do Gone Girl and they do Girl on a Train, you know,
yeah,
and it's just not good, you know, and then they're like, oh, why isn't this good? Why didn't the formula work? Gee, I wonder why. I wonder maybe like somebody that's really knows what the fuck they're doing is behind it.
I get it. When people become oversaturated, they get annoying. And
you should go away for a little bit. Like that's totally fine. But
that's not his fault. It's not his fault that he's talented and in demand.
It's not his fault also too that he's working. You know, like this is something that I gotta just say. That's also cultural too. It's like Latinos, we love to work. Like we love to like if we're not working, there's like a little bit of anxiety that goes into it. And he's always been working for years and years and years. So it's like, yeah, if you're going to say, also, he's going to work on like Disney movies, which is like a big deal to him, and like make musicals and do all these personal projects at the same time. Like, yeah. And so it's like Barry Jenkins called you, Josh, would you say no? Like, what the fuck do you do that? Like you're gonna be like, nah,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna write music for that. You
And he's
know?
good. Like
Yeah.
Miranda is a very talented songwriter. Like he's good.
He's better than the what is it, the Greatest Showman guys.
Oh, Pasek and Paul.
Yeah, he's way better than them.
Oh,
Ta
absolutely. There's no
Take
question
them.
about
I
that.
would get him out of here. But he's not as good as the Frozen duo, the married duo,
Oh, the Lopez's.
the Lopez's. They're great. They're pretty great, and they're
Yeah.
they're they're fun to just like. I hear them talk like on the circuit. They're pretty good.
I
Oh,
mean, a husband and wife teams too, so that's fun.
yeah, they're a much better husband and wife team than like the Amelia Perez people. Like that's just a mess. Anyway,
Well,
yeah, I know, but they did write "Lady," which is the song of the year. So, is that your
I
favorite
mean,
song?
a song.
Is that your
You
favorite
know
song
what?
from Amelia Perez, Josh?
I mean, if I'm being sincere, I think Mi Camino is my favorite. I
Oh,
think that's the best one. But
yeah,
Lady, I will admit, I was going around humming it for about a week
yeah.
after I had rewatched it.
I'm
So
telling you, they should nominate Vaginoplasty just so that we could see it performed at the start. Because like conservatives always get mad about Hollywood of like, oh, they're always trying to turn this into that, and where's my country and all this other bullshit, right? Just give them what they want. Just give it to them. Why not? What's what's the harm? It's not going to hurt the ratings. Like it's not like they're watching anyway. You know,
true.
go big or go home. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
Anyway,
they're going to nominate that movie in a bunch of places anyway.
oh
So
yeah, because I mean it's been doing well the last week or so. Did well with
yeah,
Critics' Choice and
Pe-
then
people who thought,
Globes.
oh, this movie's dead just because the internet didn't like it, like, have you watched a single Oscar race before? Come on.
It's also the internet. It's like the
Exactly.
same people that nominated like Don't Look Up or American Sniper. They nominate movies that people don't like all the time.
Yeah.
You know, it
No,
helps.
the industry loves Amelia Perez. It's getting a bunch of nominations.
Yeah, I do buy though. I'm not buying though. That like I saw like a post or whatever the other day, and they were like, uh, you know, it was so like once again another sold out screen. I'm like, I could see the empty seats in the picture. Like, come on, like don't lie to me. I'm not dumb. Anyway, 4 movies we're going to talk about, sort of mini reviews. We're not going to be here long. We just want to talk about them, get our thoughts out here, because most of you guys haven't seen them yet, right? We're going to talk about one that's in theaters, limited run right now, but we'll go wider in over the next couple of weeks, and that's Luca Guadagnino's Queer, Josh's most anticipated film left of the season, and Josh has seen it now, I think a total of twice,
Yes, I have seen it twice now.
starring Daniel Craig, Drew Starkey, Jason Schwartzman, Leslie Manville. Josh, what do you think of this one? I know that you were very anticipated to see it. You finally got to see it. You've now seen it twice. What do you love it? Do you not love it? Like, what are your thoughts on it? I got to know. I haven't actually talked to you about this.
I really, really liked it. It's like right on the cusp of loving it. It's not quite there, but I really responded to this movie because it is a film about yearning and longing, and I very much relate to that. Won't go into further detail, but yes, I do find that to be a very resonant theme, and I think the way that Luca explores that I found to be so mesmerizing and beautiful and moving. I think I think the movie does meander a little bit. I mean, it is intentionally kind of aimless in parts, and I think sometimes that lack of momentum is a little bit frustrating, but I also feel like the filmmaking and the performances just carry me through all the way. And by the time we get to the second half, I know that's where a lot of people have been complaining about it, but I actually feel that's when the movie's themes actually coalesce and really crystallize in a way that is very impactful. And that final, well, not the final, but that ayahuasca trip dance that they do. The second time I saw it, I teared up. I thought it was so beautiful and spoke so deeply about wanting that connection with somebody else on this very deep level. But even once you get it, may not even be all that satisfying. So yeah, I really really like this movie. It's one of my favorite films of the year.
Yeah, I saw it back in New York, Josh, and I loved it. I think that to your point about the aimlessness, I think that obviously that's the point, and I think this is a much more loose film than something like Challengers, which is from the same writing team and obviously Luca behind it. Much different sort of task with that film. That feels more precise, it feels very surgical in a great way also, in order to find sexuality in that film. And it's what we love about it so much, right? It's that, it's about tennis, which is a very like technical sport, and this is much more loose, much more a flow. I mean, it is much like it's a trip, literally, at times. And I think Daniel Craig's phenomenal. I think Drew Starkey is just as great in the film, and it helps that they're both very good looking, and they really are able to sell the intensity and intimacy of their scenes. I know everybody's asking them about these sex scenes, and I honestly really don't care too much about the sex scenes, Josh. Like, that's not my priority here. It's how Luca is telling this story and the relationship within the relationship. I mean, this is a movie about this older man who is trying to, have a relationship with potentially a guy who is either in the closet or denying themselves of who they really are. And they come to an agreement to go on this trip together. But then there also seems to be at times this fight between them and within Drew Starkey's character of, do I want to be in this relationship? Do I want to be with Lee? Do I want to really commit to this life? And being in the military as well, that probably, doesn't help either, which, at that time period or just any time period in general, the idea of being gay in the military or being different, speaks to you being an outcast. And I think Luca is able to do that while also with Lee, there's a sense of longing and loneliness that is very tender. And then at the same time, there's all these needle drops and there's all this just incredible production design and miniatures and odes and costumes to like Palin Pressburger and Max Ophuls and all these amazing influences that Luca has throughout most of his films, but definitely here. And I think the ending is the ayahuasca scene is one of the scenes of the year. I think Leslie Manville's speech to Drew Starkey is up there for me with what Michael Stuhlbarg does in Call Me by Your Name. And it's just as emotional and effective and heartbreaking. The ending itself is twisty and complicated, and will probably need multiple viewings in order to fully understand it for most people. I kind of, Josh, wish we had the longer cut. I love what we have here, and of the two Luca films, it's the one I kind of gravitate back towards more because I think there's more to unpack in it. And more to discover.
Yeah. I like them both for different reasons.
I love them for different reasons.
They satisfy two very different needs.
One's like 5 on my list, and one is like 6 on my list. So it's not like
I'm in a very similar boat.
Yeah.
One of them has it's more contemplative and emotional, and the other one's just a fun romp.
Yeah.
And there's room for both, but they satisfy very different things.
Yeah, and shows the versatility of Luca, who I just think is one of our best directors working today, period. And there's not many people that can do the things that he's doing. So like when he says he's making an American Psycho remake, or when he is doing a movie with Julia Roberts, or whatever he wants to do next, it's kind of like he has full benefit of the doubt right now. And he's working at an insane pace, but he's doing it with just absolute confidence. He's and that's the thing about this year, Josh, is I know that it's tough within critics groups to sort of try to award him for both, or try to award him in general, because you can't award two things at once. But I think he really is the filmmaker and the films that I'll probably think about the most from this year solidifying Luca as one of my favorites working right now currently. So yeah.
Yeah, I think he's a really masterful storyteller, and he gets character and mood and theme so well that you just become so invested in what they're going through. And yeah, I think Queer is. I get it that it's challenging for some people. It's a difficult watch, but I just think that the character work is so great. And even outside of that core group, we mentioned Leslie Manville, who's great. I think Jason Schwartzman is so fun in
Yeah.
that role too, and in a role that I could very easily seeing not working and being like actually borderline offensive, but there's a tenderness there that actually works for him, and it's great. I love it.
No, I think he's great too, and he works really well opposite Craig, who Craig is at now a very interesting point of his career. He can do whatever he wants. He's been Bond. He's, released from the shackles of being James Bond, doing 5 films over like a 20-year span. He's now potentially towards at least a break after the third Knives Out film comes out next year. Wake Up Dead Man, I believe is what it's called.
Yeah.
And after that, I mean, who knows when Johnson and him they don't have a deal with anyone at this point for anyone's going forward. So potentially he's going to be franchise free. This is the Daniel Craig that I just find really interesting, is like a guy
Yeah.
that's I'm using my celebrity and my power as James Bond and Benoit Blanc to go and make this really fascinating character study. And this is like the Road to Perdition guy. This is the
Yeah.
this is the Munich guy, where he's, Layer Cake, where he's working with
Hmm.
very interesting directors, stylized directors, and able to just give himself over as a performer. And we've seen a lot of drug trips, and we've seen a lot of people be drunk, and we've seen a lot of films about longing, especially, films within the gay community about longing. But there's something about the way Craig does it here. It feels so new and it feels so different, not just for something in his career, but definitely for Lucas' career, careers in his films and what he's made before in the past. And that scene where he's at he goes to the party and he's drunk, and it's in the trailer, and it's where he wants to talk to him without speaking. There's just like little moments throughout the entire film where my heart broke for Lee. And, I don't know if you're necessarily supposed to, because he's a very complicated character, but it still did nonetheless. And I think that speaks to Craig. But then there's like, I mean, Josh, I think some of the imagery of the year is the scene at the bar when they're first having a connection, or at the movie theater. And he
Yeah.
used this sort of like imaginative ghost-like figure of Craig's desires showing on screen, and being on Starkey's, resting his head on his shoulders or his hands through his
Like
hair.
reaching out to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you see that then culminate in the ayahuasca scene where their bodies are entwined,
Yeah,
and
like
create something.
literally being inside one another, but in a much more metaphysical, spiritual
Yes.
way, which is like
Yes.
exactly what he's wanting. Like he's a character who desperately wants this connection with somebody else and like literally travels to South America, to try to find it. Like that's how desperate he is to have that in his life. And I think it's a mixed bag in terms of how successful he is at getting that. And I find that to be an even more interesting complication to that character. And Daniel Craig, for a lot of people who are saying like, oh, this is like a new form for him or anything like that, like this is actually pretty consistent with what he was doing before Bond. Like if you
Yep.
look at his career from the late 90s, early 2000s, like there is a lot of roles that feel like this. So to me, it's not really something new from Daniel Craig. It's actually a return
Yep.
to what he has always wanted to do that was just sort of lost because he was doing Bond for so long.
Yeah. And this is probably not a role that many people or many actors would do while they're playing James Bond. It's very demanding. It's very
Yeah.
physical. It's very all encompassing. And so is Bond. And so
But the
And
Daniel
also
Craig
too,
before Bond was doing this all the time.
yeah, oh, easily. He was totally doing it. He was a
This
character
is
actor.
very much in line with
Yeah.
his filmography.
No, for sure. And that's why it's so great to see him work with someone like Luca who's able to just be able to tap into these actors and get the best out of them. And that's what it makes me so excited to see this film with Julia Roberts next year, an actress that I love and I think has just got this
Hmm.
great screen presence that we very much miss, Josh. And you watch how Luca, we were talking about before on the podcast, we were talking about Christopher Nolan a little bit, and we were talking about just like how Nolan gets the best out of, most actors, probably more like any actor
Yeah.
he's works with. And Luca's very much in that same camp as well. It's like, when you think of like someone like Timothy Chalamet, who we're going to talk about here in a second, his best work is universally within Lucas filmography. You know what I mean? And Call Me by Your Name is still the standard bearer for most people. In Chalamet's career, there's a lot of beautiful boy stands out there, Josh. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, that there are. They
That
won't let
I'm
it
not.
go.
Yeah, they won't let that go. Oh, remember that year? People were so mad that he was the one that missed out and everything.
I
But
mean, I get it. I would also be mad if I was really thinking that was going to happen and then it's Sam Rockwell and Vice. Like, I would be upset too.
I think Sam Rockwell was like, I gotta go back again. God damn.
Yeah, that was a real like monkey paws, like me wishing for Sam Rockwell to be in the awards conversation more often.
And then it was like on a 3-year run where it's like, let me just play racist,
Yeah,
disgusting,
even
like
he
vile
said, I think
people.
at a
It's like,
certain
I
point, I
gotta
was like,
stop playing
okay,
these
I think
guys.
I'm
Like,
done with this.
yeah. Because he did that one also with like Taraji P. Henson where he literally played like a member of the Klan.
Yeah,
And you're just
yeah.
like, did you sign a 3-picture deal? Like, what did you do, buddy? Um, well, we love Queer, and it's one of the best films of the year. Both Josh and I can't recommend it enough. Go see it in a theater near you. It should be there by end of December, early January in most places.
Yeah, it's slowly rolling out.
It's slowly rolling out. A24 is gonna get it there to you somehow, sometime. Uh, let's do another A24 film real quick. Let's talk about Babygirl, Nicole Kidman. It's her big acting push. This erotic thriller. Could you call it a
It's
thriller?
not
Like,
really a thriller.
it's more
I
just
think
like
it's being sort of sold like that, but it's not
erotic
really a
drama,
thriller.
I guess you could
Yeah,
say.
it's far more like a character study
Yeah.
than it is a thriller.
And just a very fascinating look into this woman and her sexual urges and how she turns to this intern played by Harris Dickinson and the complications that arise from that with her and her family and her business and how technology kind of also goes into that. And it's very interesting film, Josh. I saw this a couple weeks ago, and I gotta say, Nicole Kidman should make more Christmas movies because she's got some good ones. All right, she's got this one, and she's got Eyes Wide Shut. I actually weirdly find them to at times be in conversation, not all the way with one another, but just in like
Yeah,
distant
a little
relation
bit, yeah.
with each other. And that Kidman sort of gets to have the journey that that Cruise has in that film. And I think the movie is really a fascinating showcase for why Nicole Kidman is one of the great actresses that we have. Period. I think she's quite great in the film. I think Harris Dickinson's very good. I wish Antonio Banderas had a little bit more to do, other than just kind of saying the same lines over and over again. And I think that that's where I think a little bit of the problems do lie in the film for me is in sort of some of the writing and execution
Hmm.
of especially I think the finale. I think it resolves itself a little too quickly. The journey though is a fascinating journey and and one that I had a lot of fun with. But I wouldn't say it's one of the best films of the year. I'd say it's one of the more interesting films of the year. Definitely a journey worth going on, and quite really just showcasing Nicole Kidman and how fearless of a performance she is, how willing she's always been able to go. And I am glad I hope she does more of this instead of the 900 television shows she's been doing, that are like kind of garbage TV shows.
Well, she's keeping people employed.
He's keeping people employed, that's for sure.
That's
But
why
it's,
she takes on so many roles. She
I know,
literally
but
said,
they're
I'm
so
a
like
job
just
creator.
forgettable.
That's what she said.
I know, but they're so forgettable. It's just like
Well,
that
I
one
guess you
with
pay it
Liam
nice.
Shriver that's on Netflix. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, lady. Like,
Wow.
that's like, it's just, what are we doing here?
Yeah,
But this is
but she's
the,
very good in the movie. I really
yeah,
did love her performance. I thought Harris Dickinson was very good too. I think it is a movie that has so many really great ideas that I don't know really coalesce all that well for me. I did find the writing at times to feel a little stilted, to feel a little awkward in places, and I just sort of had a hard time connecting to the overall character arc that they were exploring. I think there's pockets that are really fascinating, but it was a little inconsistent for me. And this might be just down to me not vibing with this director because her previous movie, Bodies, 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 I know she
no,
didn't write that one, but I didn't really like that film all that much either. And I just think like tonally, there's something to her films that I don't quite connect with, even though I like many components of them, like some of the ideas and the performances. I did kind of feel like as a whole, it was a little lacking for me.
I agree, and I was not a big fan of Bodies, and I do think that sometimes, in the movie, and that for that movie especially, commentary was really the problem I had. It felt very detached, and it felt kind of like punches were pulled, and I do think punches are pulled a little bit here sometimes. I wish it would go sort of the full route of, like, there's this, I don't want to spoil it, but there's this sort of confrontation between the Dickinson character and Banderas' character. And that was a chance to take this movie to like another level. And I just felt like it decided to just be like, we're not going to go there.
Yeah.
And it had restraint for a movie that's not about restraint. The movie is about, uh, going the full way on those urges and desires and acting upon those. And the movie decided to do the opposite of that. And it's like, why is the movie at odds with the vibe that it's trying to tell here? And so, but there are really, I think the dynamic though between Dickinson and Kidman for most of the film, especially in the second act, is really good. It's really complicated. I don't want to really get into too much of it, Josh, because I
Yeah.
think it's one that people need to go and see and kind of talk about it. But there is a scene with Nicole Kidman where she has having to explain it to Antonio Banderas' feeling, and I do think that that is another thing that we don't normally get to see. This sort of how people's urges and desires are so difficult and complicated to explore and explain, and how
In a
they
non-judgmental space too.
exactly in a very non-judgmental space, and clearly they are judged in this case, um, but also how psychologically traumatic that can be. And I really felt that in Kidman's performance. I think it is one of the best actress performances I have seen this year. I don't think the film overall
Yeah.
is great, but I think
She's better than the movie.
she is so much better than the movie. She deserved that Volpe Cup, and she deserves more accolades. I know that she got the Golden Globe nomination, missed out on Critics'
It's a
Choice.
crowded year though
It's
for
a
Best
very
Actress.
crowded year.
Very crowded.
I have been like, okay, side note on all these reviews. I have been like tossing and turning over what is going to happen in this category.
Yeah.
But I think at this point, I don't think she's going to get in. That would be really a shame because like she can get in for like, and Josh knows this and how much we don't like this movie, but we use this as like a perfect example of like, she does something bold and interesting and they don't want to go for it. But then like she does the most basic bullshit, like being the Ricardos, and they're like, give it all to us. And she wins, and she wins awards for it. And now the time of recording this could totally change. She could totally get in. The Academy loves favorites. They love daring performances. They love her. You know what I mean? She's a previous winner, and that helps. But just got to
Competition
get
this year is just
competition,
very
and
stiff.
also there's so many films in Best Picture that are going to have actress contenders, and that just
Yeah.
feel like that's going to take a lot of spots. And
Yeah. Best Actress
so,
is going to break our hearts this year just because not everybody can get in.
yeah, it's like there's like 10 performances vying for 5 spots, 10 to 12,
Yep.
really. And there's going to be some great performances where just be like,
Yeah, it's
how did
just
we, you know,
just
and
going to happen this year.
yeah. And the other thing is try to pick a winner right now. You can't. Like
Yeah.
all the people out there saying like, oh, it's Mikey's, oh, it's Demi's, oh, it's Carla's, oh, it's Angelina's. Even I'm like, I don't know if
It's not
I
set with anybody right now.
no,
No.
because all of them could miss. They could all easily miss. Like I
I mean,
mean,
I
like
would be rather surprised if like one or two of those names missed,
I
but like
would,
that's it.
but I mean, we again, it's a crazy year. It's a stat category. People are campaigning. I mean, shit, Frances Fisher's out there with Lee, for Christ's sake. Like,
Yeah.
she's pushing stuff. And also too, like we've been hurt in this category many times before. There just feels like an Amy Adams snub coming. That's
I have
one of
not
the bigger ones that's
yeah.
gonna miss out. You know what I mean? And,
I think so.
yeah.
Like
And so just
it,
brace yourselves, folks.
that's what happens when it's just very competitive and you got a lot of passion in places. Like sometimes something that you thought was safe, but didn't really have the passion to really elicit a strong response from people, was just sort
Yeah.
of taken for granted. That's how you slip out.
Josh and I are in critics groups all the time, and we hear this all the time from people who are like, "Oh, that person's good. They're safe. I'm going to vote for somebody else over here." And then
Yeah.
guess what? They don't get in, and you're sitting there going like, "Why the fuck? How did that person miss?" So it happens. But anyway, Baby Girls slowly going to be rolling out into theaters on Christmas Day. Go give it a look if it's at a theater near you. Uh, Last two quickly, we're going to talk about Chalamet playing Bob Dylan, Complete Unknown, is out also around the holidays here. Josh, I've already kind of stated on the Editors Only podcast my thoughts on the film. I think I think Chalamet is really good. I think the film is mostly good for what this genre has been providing us over the years. I think the live performances are incredible. There's like 40 of them. It's
Yeah.
like most of the film, to be honest with you. It's kind of
It's
a
basically a musical.
I mean, like the more I've been thinking about it, I'm like, I'm really shocked how Mangold was able to kind of get this all together in such a quick turnaround for him. But anyway, I think the movie's successful, even though I don't think it's revolutionary. The only thing I would say is like, I think the acting is really great. Um,
Yeah, the
and
performances in that movie are across the board really good. I did like the supporting players, although for me, Elle Fanning was my favorite of the two
Really,
ladies.
so you're with the
I
National Board of Review, huh?
I guess I am. Maybe I wouldn't have given her the win, but if it was between the two,
That's
I really did
interesting.
like Elle Fanning. I thought
Can
she
you
was very, very good.
can I ask you just like what you connected with her? Because I didn't think she was bad or anything. I think Barbara,
I
while she is, I mean, she's playing Joe Bias for Christ's sake, but like it's more interesting role. But
Well, I think for me, the reason why I connected a little bit more to Elle Fanning is because that character is at the crux of what I think the movie's theme and thesis is, which is that Bob Dylan is this unknowable character that changes, or not really changes, but just has these like motivations that you can't really get at underneath the surface. And that's what makes him an interesting artist, but also a frustrating person to know. And it felt like that was distilled so much more cleanly within that dynamic, and therefore her performance just worked on me a little bit more. Like
yeah,
but everybody's good. I'm not,
no, but no, she
casting
just
aside
fits.
anybody
No,
else.
I agree with you, Josh. I think she fits as sort of the she is the thesis for the film, right? In that she is the one being like, I don't know anything about you, I don't know who you are, yet I'm romantically involved with you. I love you, right? Like musical audience would. I listen to your music. I put up with your neuroticism and your adultery and all these different things and what you say and how you are. But you're also, I can realize that you're a genius. And every time I try to push you away or try to ignore you, I'm drawn back to you like a moth in a flame, even though I know the pattern is going to continue. And I mean, we've kind of seen that before, but I do think for this story in particular, like that speaks very well to what Bob Dylan is, which he is an enigma. And I think we as human beings are very interested in having answers to those questions, even if we're not ready to. So I think when she goes to Newport at the end of the film with him, and that's not a spoiler, it's like literally in the trailer.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
well, it's also real life. Like,
she's not a real, she's an amalgamation of some
like,
people, but like, I get what you're, and you know what I'm
that's a
saying.
spoiler to say that she'd be there, you know.
No, but like, I'm just adding context. Anyway,
Sure.
but I think that when she's afraid to when she starts having those feelings again, and there's that scene with her and him when she's leaving and that she can't do it anymore. It's truly, it's great work from her. I think Barbara was just great and has this great connection with Chalamet. I think Edward Norton's really, really good.
I was kind of surprised by that, to be honest.
Yeah,
I wasn't going
because I saw that
it was really good. Yeah,
I saw that forehead coming a mile away, and I was just like, I don't know if this is going to be good, man. And but he's really good in the film. He really is.
He's got a great monologue.
He does. He really does. He has got a couple of scenes too where he just is really able to also connect with Chalamet. But I do think this. I mean, this is a showcase for Timothée Chalamet. I think I went into this movie, Josh, not thinking it was going to be good, because I listened to the trailer and some of the recordings that they did at the studios, and he sounded really polished. He did not sound, he sounded like Wonka singing Bob Dylan, right? The film they sang live, and I think that adds a little bit. Like, I was reading behind the scenes that they shot it live, and Norton was saying he sounds much more like Bob in a live setting than in California doing the recordings.
Sure.
And so it adds, I think that added to it. And I think also Boyd Holbrook as Johnny Cash.
I wanted more of him.
I wanted more of him. Needed more of him.
I mean, I'm always going to want more of Boyd Holbrook in general.
But I thought he was phenomenal. And was really interesting because of the connection to Johnny Cash that Mangold has. And there was
in fact, I did actually just rewatch Walk the Line, and there are references to Bob Dylan in that movie.
Yep, there are.
It's sort of an interesting conversation between the two films.
You think which one do you think is better though?
A Complete Unknown is better.
Okay.
Walk the Line, not a good movie.
No,
in my opinion. No, I did not like it. Well, but to be fair, the musician biopic, I think, is my least favorite genre of all time. I don't really like it. And even in A Complete Unknown, I think while I give it credit for trying to do something a little bit different, of not being the copy and paste formula that we normally get with these movies, I think having this objective of showing this character who is meant to be a bit unknowable at the center is a little bit frustrating in terms of trying to connect as an audience member. And I actually think that if this movie was all about Newport at the end, and the whole film was just about this like final performance, and it's what is Dylan going to do in terms of, is he going to go still be traditional, or is he going to do electric? And that was the conversation throughout the entire movie. I think that would have been better for me, because that's what kind of the film is eventually leading to anyway. And I think you could have still stretched those themes out just through focusing on this one event.
Yeah.
And I think as it is, the movie is a little bit of a struggle for me to connect with up until that point. Once that happens, then I'm like all in. Then it's like, okay, this is great. But up until that point, I have to admit, I struggled with it mightily to really get at the actual character stuff that they were doing.
No, that's fair. No, that's totally fair. I'm a big Bob Dylan fan, and so for me, I think that this is the least interesting era, because this has been very well established. How there was this massive divide, and I think honestly, you're right, Josh. If they just focused on 1965, the struggle from the Newport Folk Festival, and them being like, we don't want him to flip. Like, you could do a montage at the beginning where he's blowing in the wind and all times are changing, all this stuff. And then then the movie is about that, and then the sort of the aftermath, right? His sort of release of being just a folk singer. He can be whatever he wants. He can be literally Bob Dylan. And then what's interesting is like that final segment of the film, this film, could lead perfectly into the segment in Todd Haynes' film, I'm Not There, which is when Bob Dylan is criticized and he's in his electric phase and he's overseas, and the people are literally, booing him at these concerts, and he spent like literally making some of the greatest rock music of all time, being chastised for it. And it's crazy to think that.
Yeah.
And it
But
would have
it's
just
an interesting
been
context to
it's
look
really
at that
no,
in.
it is. It's interesting context of like in our society where rock music does exist, and he's a legend and he was vilified by the people that loved him the most. And so and I think that that's where I would have loved to see Jay Cox, who I think is a really great screenwriter, mostly works with like Martin Scorsese, sort of tap into that. And I wish that's why I kind of was like Josh by the end. I was like, can we continue this? Like, can we go to 66, 67? Like, can we move this train just a couple more years? Like it really does get going by the end. And, I would be down to see more, honestly. Like I really would, because I do think Chalamet's committed, and there is more interesting things later in his life that's very interesting. And
Sure, but the movie is also looking at a very specific time period and
no, I
a
know.
transition point, and I get that. I think for me, I will always be a big proponent of this particular tactic when doing a biopic, which is to take one event and
Yeah.
like use that as the encapsulation of
Yeah.
all these other things that you want to talk about. Like I call it the Lincoln method. Lincoln is
Yeah.
all about doing one very specific thing, but in doing so, you get to talk about all the other stuff that you would in a traditional biopic, and it's just filtered through trying to do this one thing. And
Yeah,
that's why I think
oh God, Steve Jobs.
yeah, exactly. And that's why I think if this movie was all about the festival, it would have been so much better because your narrative is so much more focused, but you can still talk about all the other stuff surrounding Dylan through this festival and what he's going to do here. Like you don't have to sacrifice that commentary in order to get a more streamlined story.
I totally agree with you, but then also, Josh, if you like your Bob Dylan segmented into 6 different stories, there's this little movie called I'm Not There, and it's pretty good. And I don't know.
Yeah, but this is probably more appealing, generally speaking, than that film.
Yeah, but that movie is like, to me, that movie's a masterpiece, and it's a movie that basically eliminates it. It also takes the biopic and flips it a little bit on its head and trying to like, how are you going to do this? 6 different people with 6 different eras. Have some be real, have some be fake, have some be amalgamations of different eras, collide them all together and make because like, people said at that time, I'm like, well, what does the movie mean? It's like, exactly. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the point.
It's a Todd Haynes film.
You know what I mean? And yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, I trust Todd Haynes a little bit more than I do James Mangold, but I don't think James Mangold's a bad director.
No, he's not a bad director. This movie's not badly directed. It's just kind of unremarkable
standard
for me
Yeah.
in most of it, and it gets more interesting, but not in enough places for me to say like it's a great movie.
No, I agree, but I do wish, I just wish it kept going. Like, give me 30 more minutes. Give me, give me like.
I'm also not a like Dylan devotee. Like I like his music, but I'm
No, I
not
get it.
in the world as much as other people.
No, yeah, I that's fair. I do think though that we're on the verge of being again on a massive overload of these goddamn biopics. Next year we have the Michael Jackson one. We're gonna evidently Sam Mendes is doing 4 Beatles movies. We have the which I'm not looking forward to because I'm just not a Mendes guy. And then we have the Jeremy Allen White film from Scott Cooper, again a director, Scott Cooper, who is a director that I'm like very mixed on.
He can be good, but don't see how that movie's gonna be great.
Well, I think to that point though, Josh, that is specifically around one album. That is not Cradle to Grave, Springsteen. So that gives me hope, and I think Alan White is a good enough actor; he could pull it off. But That's just that Nebraska album, which is also really interesting because not a lot of people, like in mainstream, probably like listen to the Nebraska album. So that's interesting as well too. But a lot of the Nebraska album in those recording sessions bled into songs that then went into Born in the USA. Specifically, the song Born in the USA was created during that time. So it'll be very fascinating to see how that turns out. I won't be uber critical of that movie if it is not good at all.
Yeah.
I won't be like that at all. But Complete Unknown, it's good. Go give it a look. I expect every dad in your tri-state area to be seeing it this weekend. They've been
I mean, but
marketing.
also like the Timmy stands, they'll be there too.
I mean, shit. Timmy was out there on college football and making picks, and he's marketing the shit out of this
Oh,
movie. Good for him.
now that he is not shooting that Safdie movie anymore, you could tell he is out in full force,
He's
and
having fun.
I also think a formidable campaigner
He's
from what I've
he's
seen so far.
he's got two big movies, probably
Mm.
most likely both of them getting into Best Picture, maybe, and people like him. People like
Yeah,
Timmy. He's
I
gonna be
know
out
that
there.
young guys don't win that Oscar very often,
It's
but
very rare.
I I don't
We'll
know. We'll
see.
see. We'll
It's a
see.
long race.
We
I think it's a three-headed race at this point. I still think I have Timmy out front, but I think right there is Adrian Brody and
Of
right there
course,
is
yeah.
Ray Fiennes. Both have narrative. One is the performance of the year. The other one is the movie star of his generation. The other is a long overdue narrative. We will see how that plays out.
Yeah, and a possible Best Picture winner.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So it's like, what do you do? You know what I
yeah,
mean? So we'll see how it plays out. But Complete Unknown, it'll be in theaters, and we'll be talking about this film throughout the season because, like Josh said, the award season. Lastly, Nosferatu. Robert Eggers is back. All you Eggers
hmm
hairs out there, horror is back. Horror right now, Josh, is
amazing.
I think the dominating genre of people's interest. You had a movie like, you have the usual fare of films that have done well. You have the A24 machines also. You have the successes of movies like Long Legs and The Substance this year. Horror is truly back. Horror is as reliable as an animated movie at this point at the box office. People are going to see it and they're going to enjoy it. And that's interesting because I think you can get directors more behind making a horror movie, maybe nowadays, auteurs at least, than maybe making superhero movies, which would be kind of cool. And Robert Eggers, who had been wanting to make this film for like over a decade,
I mean, pretty much since he wanted to be a
be a
filmmaker, it
director.
sounds like he's
Yeah.
wanted to make this movie.
He's had a vision of this for a long, long time. And he's made it. It's his fourth film. And Josh, I know you just saw it last night, if I'm not mistaken, or like the other night,
Uh, yeah,
a couple nights ago,
Friday. Yeah.
Friday night. Okay, Josh, what do you think of Nosferatu?
Well, I do think it is interesting knowing that Eggers had such a personal connection to this material and has been wanting to make his adaptation for so long, because I actually think that is an issue with the
Ooh,
movie. I really do like it. I want to be upfront about that. I do think it's very good, and I love the crafts and the performances and all that. But I think what I was really struck by was that at the end of it, I just sort of felt like that's a very good adaptation of Nosferatu that doesn't really do much else than be a good adaptation of Nosferatu. And there's a part of me that sort of feels like his affection for the original source kind of made it seem like the story was constrained a bit. Like it needed to do all this stuff to pay homage to that original movie, but never really did much that felt innovative from a storytelling perspective. And I get that with his previous three films, like even The Northman, while that's like a riff on Hamlet, there's still interesting things that happen in that narrative with those characters. And I didn't feel that quite as much here. It just sort of felt like the arcs that we were presented with were pretty standard and didn't do much outside of not just the original Nosferatu, but many other adaptations of Dracula out there. So, good movie. I enjoyed it, but I have to admit to being like a little disappointed by it and of his 4 movies, I actually would rank this fourth out of that group.
Well, Josh, I'm here to tell you, buddy. I think this is his best movie to date. Um, I have been um, long um, at the waiting, anticipating line for Robert Eggers to blow me away. I have really respected and liked a lot of his movies. I haven't loved them. Like, I really respected the hell out of The Witch, and I think the Northman and The Lighthouse. Both of them are just really fascinating movies that, like, man, if a scene's cut here, or like this is a little tighter, or it's like I could vibe with this. I could really, then I could fully love it. But I respect the hell out of these things, and they're all like B plus films for me. Like, if I have to get a grade on them, great batting average, and no one's gonna ever get mad at it. 3 films all being a B plus, and technically nobody is working like Robert Eggers. In terms of specificity, in terms of time period, in terms of level of detail, nobody works like him right now. There is not anybody getting nearly the level of checks that he is getting to make movies like this. It is ridiculous that we have this movie to begin with, because of the whole thing with the Northman and the streaming platform, that somehow between the VOD and being on a streamer and not being in the theaters that much, somehow it made a crap ton of money that we'll never know about, but enough that it made a significant profit and is one of Focus Features' more celebrated films and widely seen films of the last 5 to 10 years, which is insane, right? And obviously, The Witch and The Lighthouse have their own respective fan bases. It's really where we first really got like widely known on Anya Taylor-Joy, and then obviously that's sort of the run that Robert Pattinson's on and Willem Dafoe's. Those 2 performances.
The Lighthouse is my favorite of
those movies are
films. That one is my favorite.
That's probably, I don't know where I would rank these other ones, because they're all just like, they all kind of like mixed together, but they all weirdly are great and at their own at times in their films, and at other times I'm like, God, this should be cut, or God, why did you lose focus? This movie, though, I didn't like the idea, Josh, that he's remaking Nosferatu. I didn't weirdly like the idea that he's tapping into the lore of Nosferatu and Dracula. It's like, we've seen this done so many times. But weirdly, it felt extremely personal and relevant this go around. And that's the thing that I was watching, and I was like, this feels very cautionary. It feels very consequential in the decisions. And it's less about lust and desire, and it's more about the dangers of wanting something like this, and how this figure can be a cancer more than something you fall in love with. And if you've chosen that, then you have to fully commit to the darkness and suffer whatever consequences come. And when you try to come back on that, there's high stakes and ramifications, and we see that throughout the film. Technical level speaking, this is one of like the best technically crafted films of the year. There's no question about that. The cinematography at times in this movie, Josh, the use of shadow and darkness, which is so important to make a movie like this work, is exquisite. And we've been having a lot of debates online about shadow and how to use it in certain big budget films. And I'm not going to go into that, but I'm just going to say,
I don't want to go into that.
You want to see a show, but you want to see a showcase on how to properly do it for the tone and setting of your film. This is a good showcase. And I actually would rather people talk about how exquisite the use of light and when it is used and not used in this film is fantastic. And I do think that Lily Rose Depp gives a very physical, committed performance. I think Willem Dafoe he should only be making Robert Eggers movies. He's incredible every time he works with Egger.
I'm actually going to disagree about Willem Dafoe.
You don't like him in this movie? He's really
It's not that I don't like him. It's just that I find that his presence takes me out of the movie like almost immediately. And it just feels like he is doing the crazy Van Helsing in a movie that doesn't really feel like it needs a crazy Van Helsing though. Like,
but see, I don't think he's as crazy as like Hopkins or other guys that we've seen do this performance. You know what I mean?
But at the same time, like the fact that I saw this movie with a crowd and there was like regular people at this crowd. And when he showed up, he didn't even like do anything. He just showed up and people started laughing. Like just instinctually, like, oh, it's Willem Dafoe. He's probably going to be crazy. I should be actually like laughing at this moment. And I kind of felt like that's a problem. Like, I don't think we should be like having that much fun with this character at this moment. And it felt a little incongruous with the overall tone of the movie. I love Willem Dafoe. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think, tonally speaking, that performance works all that much in this film.
See, I did have fun with it and I did kind of laugh with it because I know exactly who that character is. And
yeah, I just think it belongs in this movie. In this particular
it totally
does.
Because otherwise it's a completely otherwise it's The Witch. Like he would be making The Witch again, which honestly, the movie is very much in connection with that film. They share a spirit with one another in terms of succumbing to dark things outside of their control. Right. And I think that,
yes. And I will say for me though, I do like, I get that, but I also feel like in The Witch, that narrative arc was a lot more pronounced for like the Anya Taylor-Joy character than I necessarily felt with Lily Rose Depp here. Like I think it's there, but in terms of her active agency within the story, it felt a little muted and a little incomplete for me. Like the idea was there, but she's not like truly the main character enough for that to carry all the way through. And instead, I'm sort of left with still this feeling of desire and lust that like the Coppola version already did, you know? And again,
see, I don't think it went that far. I think that I think they go at it in different ways, Josh, but that's totally fair.
And I still like the movie. I also want to be very clear.
Yeah, no.
I still think it's a good movie. Well, you know how the internet is. You bring up some
I know, Josh, but you know,
the film.
How dare you bring up some things that didn't make it like the greatest movie of all time for you? Like, you know what I mean?
I think it's still a really good movie. Very well crafted, very good performances. Like Lily Rose Depp, it's usually not the type of acting that I like fall over for, but obviously very like technically committed physicality. And
her and
Holt is great.
Yeah.
You know, Skarsgård. The voice,
I think great. I think it all is like they're very bold choices and they work for the aesthetic that he's going for. It's very raw, it's very bloody, it's very terrifying. The scene on the ship is one of the scariest things I've seen in any horror film this year. Just the way in which he's able to use lightning, use shadow. Like it's really well crafted. Like it's, you know, it's and then it has a massive conversation about believing victims in it as well, which is obviously in the story for years, but it really is cemented within the Aaron Taylor Johnson character, who I also think is very good in the film too, and also just very good to look at as always. A lot
of whiplash though from seeing this and Craven within a 24-hour period.
What a double bill for him. But then I do think that there's plague and you know, and sickness and everything, and and it's used. There just feels more sinister, this movie, than I think even the Coppola version and other films that have come before it. It feels, again, the word consequential is the thing that kept coming to my mind, is that these characters have consequences for their actions. And I think that he sees, not necessarily in terms of religion, but he definitely sees sin here. Power, lust, money, you know, they're all at the forefronts of these characters and their stations, and they all benefit, or they don't benefit, I mean, when they are attracted to what the count is able to offer them. And then there is no going back from it. And it is sort of a very, at times, unrelenting examination of that. And I think that for Eggers and his filmography and the trajectory of where he is going as a filmmaker, making his last film was a revenge tale, a through and through revenge tale. I think to have a sort of unrelenting view of these characters and of this world is exactly on point for him and the type of storyteller he makes, and he's fully invested in it. And it's very confident for him, and so it kind of blew me away, just like how I wouldn't say mean he is. I don't think he's mean to these people, but I think that he's just like you guys made these decisions. You listened to the devil. Now you gotta, there's no escaping it. There's no hiding it. There's no fixing this. You have to face it. And,
Sure.
and that to me, that's part of the original story. I think some other films have evaded those consequences for more campier or fun or sexier or stylized versions of this. I like that this is more stripped down at times and just matter of fact and to the point, and it makes for a very compelling film. It's one of the late breakers that I was just like, I would like to watch this again, please. There are some performances that I'm like not the biggest fan of. I'm not the biggest fan of like Emma Corrin's performance or the guy that essentially plays Renfield. I'm like, how many freaking
Simon McBurney.
Yeah, I'm like,
Well, but you know what? The one thing about Simon McBurney that
I love the rats.
Is that
I love the rats.
The rats are great, but Simon McBurney is usually a actor who you hire to play a very specific type of buttoned up Englishman, and so I actually did appreciate that he got to let loose because I just don't see that from him very
He was just
often.
like, I'm just gonna eat all these rats. And,
I at least appreciated that opportunity because that's not a role that you would normally hire Simon McBurney for. So
yeah, I just wish that we got to.
But you know exactly what that character's doing, and
but it would have been interesting to, as I thought the rest of the film kind of is more fleshed out, to finally have a really decent fleshed out version of that character, because it usually is just like that. And
somebody didn't see Renfield starring Nicholas Hoult.
I did, not that kind of fleshed out, Josh. I meant like in the context of the original story. You know what I mean? But it'll be in theaters on Christmas. It's nice to have it's nice. You know what, Josh, with all these films that we've talked about as we're about to wrap up here, it's just nice to have a choice at the theater. So many movies out right now. Options. Do you usually go to the theater on during the holidays, or on Christmas, or do you have a tradition?
Not really. I mean, I used to work at a movie theater, so attending a movie on the holidays.
Do you have a horror story you'd like to share real quick before we head out of here of the craziest night you ever had working on a
I
Christmas?
do remember, because I worked at a theater that used to do special Tuesday screenings where it's $5 and we had free popcorn. I can't remember if it must have been Christmas Day that was on a Tuesday, and it was pandemonium.
Oh crap.
It was awful.
Do you remember the movies that were playing?
Oh God, I don't remember. It was 10 years ago when I was working at a theater, but it was just, it didn't really matter what was playing. It was a discount day and it was a holiday. So it didn't matter. Everything was sold out. And it was just, I think that was a 10-hour shift and it was a blur. I don't know what happened.
The best one I always had was trying to find a screening of Django Unchained that wasn't sold out on Christmas Day. And I went, really? Everybody wanted to see this? Like I thought I was going to be the only one seeing it, and we had to see a 9:30 screening of it because the 7:00 was sold out, and that's how far it was until you could see it. So we had to go.
I remember that and Les Mis were the two Christmas Day releases that year, and Les Mis was also
Les Mis was crazy. It was it's kind of crazy. You put big movies out at Christmas, people might want to go see them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you put two big movies out at Thanksgiving and everybody wins all of them. kind of helps to have choice.
I mean, actually, even Moana, it wasn't on
Yeah.
Thanksgiving this year,
No,
but it was around that time. So,
and that movie sucks so much, and
Yeah,
yet
it's
it
not
made
good.
so much money. It is
which
ridiculous.
I feel like I don't.
I
like
know
that.
it's
I feel like that is a bad omen for what that company is going to be doing in the future.
again
I
animated
don't
movie.
like that their scraps of a television show that they hobbled together at the last minute is now going to make $1 billion for them. I don't like that.
It's animated movies and horror movies. That's what makes a lot of money. So you can go see that. You can go see any of the movies that we just said. You can go see Sonic 3. You can go see Mufasa. If you got The Brutalist near you, go watch that. You know,
In
there's
an IMAX in some places.
yeah, it should be. So just go see movies, folks. That's all we're saying. Josh, can you tell everybody where they can find you and all your work on the internet, sir?
You can find me on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Letterboxd at JR Parham, and you can find my work over at Next Best Picture and AwardsWatch.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Blue Sky at Ryan McQuade 77. If you like podcasts, we have the Director Watch podcast released on Thursdays. And this Thursday's episode is Josh's favorite Nancy Meyers movie, What Women Want. And our friend Dan Bayer is on that episode, right, Josh? Did I get that wrong? I'm sorry.
I would double check your sources on that.
Okay, sorry, buddy. What Women Want, fascinating conversation with Dan. That's on Thursday. iTunes, Spotify, 5-star reviews. Greatly appreciate those. Go to the website, sign up for the newsletter. It's a great way to get all the stuff that's going on during the season, award season, holiday season, you name it, all the stuff we're doing over there, or awardswatch.com. Next week, we'll be back for the last regular episode of the podcast this year. We have a special end of the year podcast that we do. We are doing another retrospective over the year 2019, and I'm sure it will be a very civil conversation, very, very quick, easy debates.
No controversial opinions.
No
about the
controversial
movies at
opinions.
all.
No
We will not
arguing.
have any arguments about any of the movies that were nominated.
I feel like there will be no quarrels and parlays and all these things, and it's going to feel very, you brought up Lincoln earlier. It's going to feel very Lincoln.
Oh,
there you
for
go.
sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
people are going to be like bringing out their Laura Dern suits to go to court for different films. So thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you all next time.